Queen Zarath of Eloria stared out from her throne, the intricate crystal structure of the royal hall reflecting an array of swirling colors that only Elorians could fully appreciate. Her long ears flicked involuntarily as she tried to ignore the sudden buzzing in the air, a constant reminder of the council's ongoing bickering behind her. The Elorian people were known for their patience and intelligence, but they could never seem to agree on anything when it came to the simplest of matters. What should the morning's ceremonial drinks be? What color should the royal banners hang? Zarath's ears twitched again, a typical Tuesday. "Your Majesty," a voice broke through the haze of drone-like chatter. It was General Threx, his thin lips twisting in a grimace of distaste as he entered the hall. "We have discovered something most peculiar." Zarath sighed, fighting the urge to roll her eyes. She knew what this meant. Another endless cycle of political intrigue. Another day spent deciphering the reports of an endless line of spies and subordinates trying to dig up the slightest detail of her history or private life. It was tedious, to say the least. Threx continued, his voice rising as he approached her throne. "It's the archives, my queen. There's a discrepancy in the records, something we overlooked for years. It pertains to the human who saved your life." Zarath froze. The casual mention of the word human was enough to snap her out of her indifference. She had always heard of the man who saved her life, but no one, not even the greatest minds of Eloria, had ever been able to uncover his true identity. The ancient stories were vague. A mysterious warrior, they'd said. An alien hero, they had written. But what if the truth was something far more unexpected? "I'm listening, Threx," Zarath said, her voice taking on an edge she hadn't intended. Her long ears twitched again, but this time, in curiosity rather than irritation. "According to our findings," Threx continued, "the man who saved you was not an alien hero from some distant planet as we were told. He was human from Earth." Zarath stared at him, blinking twice to make sure she wasn't hearing things. "Human." She almost choked on the word. "A human saved me." Threx nodded, his face as serious as ever. "It appears so, Your Majesty. We believe he was not only human but that he came from a primitive, undeveloped species. It's quite embarrassing, actually." Zarath's thoughts swirled. A human, that was inconceivable. The same species that was constantly mocked in Elorian society for being backward and unworthy of attention. Yet here it was, a human, the hero who had saved her life. A deep breath escaped her, and despite herself, she found herself smiling, the absurdity of it all tugging at her senses. She had always imagined this hero to be some grand alien, with multiple limbs, shimmering skin, and a dazzling intellect. But a human, the most mundane of creatures, the very idea was almost laughable. "Are you telling me," Zarath said, raising an eyebrow, "that the mighty queen of Eloria owes her life to some guy from Earth? A guy who probably couldn't even pronounce the word regal properly?" Threx shifted uncomfortably. "It seems that way, yes." Zarath threw back her head and laughed. It wasn't a gentle chuckle. It was a full, booming laugh that reverberated through the chamber. The council members glanced nervously at each other, unsure whether to join in or remain silent. "I can't believe this," she muttered to herself, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "A human, of all the species, a human." Threx looked at her, clearly baffled. "Your Majesty, I understand that this is difficult to process, but this is no laughing matter. Your life was spared by this man. We have the recordings from that time. The entire event was documented in real time." Zarath nodded, wiping the last remnants of laughter from her lips. She had forgotten in the heat of the moment how serious the situation was. "You're right, but come on, Threx, a human." She couldn't help herself. The absurdity of it all bubbled up inside her again. "Perhaps we should investigate further," Threx suggested, his voice heavy with worry. "We don't know what else this could mean. This man, this human, he might still be out there. We need to find him." Zarath paused, looking at him, her curiosity piqued. The idea of meeting the human who had saved her life seemed strangely thrilling. "Yes, we will find him," she said decisively, her earlier amusement replaced by a quiet resolve. "And I want him brought here, immediately." Zareth's starship sliced through the cold void of space as she ventured toward Earth. The ship, with its sleek, silver exterior, was an artifact of Aloria's finest engineering. Its thrusters hummed softly, a soothing contrast to the chaos of her thoughts. The idea of seeking out this human, this mystery man, was an odd one. It didn't make sense. She was a queen, a ruler of an entire planet. Why should she seek out a man who had probably never even considered what it would be like to meet her again? And yet she couldn't shake the pull of curiosity, the absurdity of it. The laughter that had bubbled from her chest back in the council hall now felt like a distant memory. There was something deeper here, something that demanded her attention. As she neared Earth, the first thing she noticed was the planet's chaotic atmosphere. Aloria was a place of peace, of order. But Earth was alive with unpredictability, with noise and color, everything in constant motion. She couldn't help but laugh to herself again. It seemed fitting, somehow, that the man who had saved her life would come from such a place. Her ship touched down with a gentle thud, and she stepped out onto the planet's surface. The air, thick with the smell of exhaust and fast food, made her pause for a moment. She couldn't believe she was standing on Earth, a place she had only ever heard about in passing. The streets were chaotic, filled with strange metallic creatures called cars. People hustled by, ignoring her presence completely. They had no idea that the Queen of Aloria had just arrived on their humble little planet. "Well, this should be fun," Zareth muttered to herself, adjusting the folds of her regal robe and bracing herself for whatever Earth had to throw at her. The streets of Earth were nothing like Zareth had imagined. She had expected chaos, of course. That was something she had prepared herself for. But what she hadn't anticipated was how charmingly unpredictable it all was. The cars zoomed past her in a blur of honking horns and screeching tires, their drivers seemingly oblivious to her royal presence. A few humans stared, but most just kept on with their busy, frantic lives. One man even stepped into her path, bumped into her, muttered something about his coffee, and rushed off without a second glance. Zareth raised an eyebrow. Apparently, the concept of a royal procession hadn't quite made it to this part of Earth. "Right. This is going to be a lot of fun," she muttered under her breath, her long ears twitching slightly in amusement. She glanced at the worn map she had found in the control room of her ship, trying to locate the address she had been given. It was a modest place, a small apartment nestled in one of Earth's more rustic districts. She started walking, her pace quick and deliberate, trying to avoid tripping over the various obstacles that seemed to spring up out of nowhere. It wasn't the technology she had expected, but she figured that was Earth's charm. A strange mix of ingenuity and complete chaos. There was a certain endearing quality to it. Eventually, she arrived at the address. It wasn't much to look at, a humble, crumbling building with cracked windows and peeling paint. The door to the apartment was slightly ajar, and a faint smell of stale pizza and some kind of chemical cleaning product wafted out. The humans on this planet certainly had a unique take on cleanliness, it seemed. She knocked once, then twice, then again just to make sure she was being heard. The door creaked open, and standing there was a man who, for all intents and purposes, looked like an ordinary human. He was in his late 30s, a bit scruffy, and Zareth had to admit, he had a sort of disarming charm. His hair was a little too messy, and his t-shirt was covered in what appeared to be a mixture of coffee stains and something that looked suspiciously like grease. "Yes?" he asked, rubbing his eyes, clearly having just woken up from a nap. He blinked at her, and Zareth couldn't help but notice the faint look of confusion on his face. He wasn't surprised, not in the way she had expected. No wide-eyed awe, no dropping of jaws, just an almost casual curiosity. "I am Queen Zareth of Aloria," she said, her voice as regal as she could manage despite the absurdity of the situation. "I've come to speak with the man who saved my life." The man, Adam, as she had been told, narrowed his eyes, clearly processing the information. "Wait a second," he said, taking a step back and then looking at her more carefully. "Are you really the Queen, like from space?" Zorath paused, unsure whether to be offended or amused. "I'm not just from space, I'm from Eloria. You may have heard of it." Adam scratched his head, looking like he was trying to remember if he'd ever read about Eloria in one of his outdated textbooks. Right, that Eloria. You know, I always thought it was more of a vacation spot for really rich aliens. Never thought I'd meet the Queen." Zorath blinked at him. Vacation spot. She was the queen of an advanced civilization, a ruler with powers that could rival the greatest forces in the galaxy, and Adam thought her home was a vacation spot. She was about to say something, but then the absurdity of the moment struck her again, and she couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Is this what Earth is like?" she asked between fits of giggles. "No formal introductions, no reverence for a queen. You humans sure have an interesting way of greeting royalty." Adam grinned, leaning against the doorframe. "Hey, you're the one who just showed up unannounced. I wasn't expecting a queen to knock on my door. Usually, it's just pizza delivery guys, you know." Zorath wiped the tear from her eye. "You're impossible." Adam shrugged, completely unfazed. "It's Earth. We're pretty laid back about things like this. The whole royalty thing is more, well, you know, medieval, right?" Zorath, now composed, looked at him carefully. There was something strangely comforting about the way he spoke, so nonchalantly. A man who had saved her life, and yet here he was, acting as if they were two old friends catching up over a cup of coffee. "So, you're the one who saved me," Zorath said, her tone now more serious. "I've come to find out why you did it. Why did you save me? What made you, a human, risk your life for someone like me?" Adam scratched his chin thoughtfully, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for the right words. "Well, I mean, it's not really that complicated. I saw someone in trouble and I did what anyone would do. Or at least, what any decent person would do. I didn't even know you were a queen at first, you know, just a lady in distress." Zorath raised an eyebrow. "You didn't know who I was, not even a little bit." Adam shrugged. "Nope. Didn't even think about it. I just saw you fall and it seemed like the right thing to do. I didn't know it was going to lead to this whole life-debt thing, though." Zorath's ears flicked again. A life debt. The concept seemed oddly old-fashioned. She had been taught that it was rare in the galaxy, something from long-forgotten customs. Yet here she was, feeling indebted to a human, a species that, as far as she was concerned, had no place in her world. And yet there was a quiet dignity about Adam. It wasn't that he expected anything in return. He seemed perfectly content with his life. "You really don't get it, do you?" Zorath said, leaning forward, the seriousness of the moment settling in. "You saved a queen, Adam, not just anyone, a queen. My people owe you more than just thanks. They owe you loyalty, respect. You could have had anything you wanted." Adam looked at her, his expression shifting slightly. "You're telling me I could have asked for anything? I don't know, Queen Zorath, that sounds like a bit of a setup. I'm a simple guy. I didn't save you for rewards. I saved you because it was the right thing to do." Zorath tilted her head, her long ears twitching with intrigue. "Right thing to do. In this universe there are very few who understand the meaning of that. You're something else, Adam." Adam, now looking slightly uncomfortable, rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, well, I'm also out of pizza, so if you don't mind." Zorath laughed again, this time with a softness she hadn't expected. "Perhaps I've underestimated Earth," she mused. "But I think it's time we take a walk, don't you? There's a lot to discuss, and maybe, just maybe, you'll explain how someone like you doesn't even know the word reward." Adam grinned and opened the door wider, stepping aside. "Well, Your Majesty, if you're offering, I could really use a sandwich right about now." And with that, Zorath entered Adam's world, one that was, she had to admit, far more interesting than she could have ever imagined. Zorath's eyes darted around the apartment as she stepped inside. It wasn't what she had expected, nothing like the grand, sophisticated homes of her people on Eloria. No gleaming technological surfaces, no floating appliances or walls lined with art from every corner of the universe. This place was humble, humorous even. The couch looked like it had been through a war, the table was cluttered with strange mechanical gadgets, and there were pizza boxes stacked in the corner. She had seen these things in reports, of course, but seeing them in person was an entirely different matter. You know, for someone who saved a queen's life, I'd expect a bit more grandeur, Zoreth said, raising an eyebrow as she surveyed the room. Adam, who had already tossed himself onto the couch, snorted. Yeah, well, grand is kind of overrated. You should try getting out of a spaceship and living in a place where your rewards are the occasional leftover pizza and, antiques that have been around longer than the entire solar system. Zoreth couldn't help but laugh. Antiques. She motioned to the pile of wires and half-built gadgets scattered across the table. Those look like broken machines, not antiques. Well, that's the beauty of it, Adam grinned. They were broken, but now they're art. Zoreth let out a small laugh and sat down across from him. Art, right. I suppose I should admire your ability to make chaos look intentional. Adam leaned back, stretching his arms. Exactly. There's a whole philosophy behind it. Destruction leads to creation, or whatever they say, works well for me. I mean, I'm no alien queen, but I'm making do. She tilted her head, her long ears flicking curiously. You're telling me that this, she waved her hand around the room, is your artistic expression. I guess I'm just a misunderstood genius, Adam said with mock seriousness, eyes glinting with humor. No one understands the deeper meaning of discarded electronics and a half-eaten sandwich. Zoreth chuckled again, shaking her head. She had always expected humans to be somewhat barbaric, primitive even, but Adam's easy confidence was disarming. There was a strange intelligence in his simplicity, a way of approaching the world that felt refreshingly honest. It was clear that he didn't want recognition for his actions or his talents. He just lived as he pleased, in his own chaotic human way. So, now that we've gotten past the grandeur of your art, Zoreth began, leaning forward, tell me more. How is it that you ended up saving my life, as you so modestly put it? Adam sighed, glancing around the room before letting his gaze fall on her. It's a long story, Your Majesty, and not exactly the most glamorous one. I'm not here for glamour, Zoreth said, her voice softening. I'm here for the truth. Adam rubbed the back of his neck and gave her an almost apologetic smile. All right, here goes. I was just a guy who got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. 1 minute I'm just minding my business, doing what I do, working on my latest art project probably when I see this whole assassination thing going down. It was like something out of a bad action movie. You're there getting attacked, and the whole place is in chaos. Zoreth's eyes widened slightly. You saw the assassination attempt. Adam nodded. Yeah, I don't know why, but something in me just clicked. I didn't even know you were a queen at first. Hell, I didn't even know what kind of species you were. Zoreth sat back, trying to process his words. She had always assumed that someone had orchestrated the rescue, that it had been planned, that there was some kind of strategic motivation behind it. To hear it described so simply, an impulse, an instinct shook her in a way she hadn't anticipated. She had always viewed her life as a delicate balance of power and purpose, never something to be saved by a mere impulse. That's it. Zoreth asked, her voice almost too soft. No grand strategy, no hidden agenda. Adam shrugged. I mean, I didn't know who you were. It wasn't about you being a queen or some grand figure. It was about seeing someone in trouble. I've always thought that when something's wrong, you do your best to fix it. No one else was doing anything, so I did. Zoreth felt a pang of something unfamiliar. She had never thought of herself as vulnerable before. She was a queen, a ruler, a symbol of power. And yet here she was, face to face with the man who had seen her as nothing more than a person in need. For the first time, Zorath wondered if her status had blinded her to something deeper, something more human. "You make it sound so simple," she said after a long pause. Adam grinned. "Well, that's the trick, isn't it? Keeping things simple. Everyone wants to overcomplicate everything. But in the end, it just comes down to seeing someone in need and deciding you're the one who's going to help." Zorath took a deep breath, her long ears flicking again as she leaned forward, her gaze steady. "I owe you more than just my life, Adam. My people, my entire civilization will owe you a debt for what you did. You're more than a hero. You're—" "Hold on," Adam interrupted, holding up a hand. "I didn't do it for the credit. I didn't do it for the debt or any of that. I did it because I saw someone who needed help, and if that's worth something, then great. But I'm not looking for a parade or a statue or anything like that." Zorath blinked at him, taken aback. This was not the response she had expected. In her world, saving a queen would be rewarded with wealth, power, titles, things that even the most respected of individuals on Eloria would covet. But here, Adam was offering no such demand. He didn't even want recognition. It made her realize just how deeply different they were, and yet, in the strangest way, how that difference had brought them together. "Do you really mean that?" she asked, her voice quieter than before. "Of course I do," Adam replied, nodding. "I mean, I'm no saint. I've had my share of screw-ups, but I'm not gonna start asking for favors just because I helped you out once. Life's too weird for that. We're all just trying to get by." Zorath leaned back in her chair, her long ears drooping in thought. For the first time since her arrival on Earth, she felt something stir within her. A kind of warmth. A sense of connection that she hadn't expected. "I'm beginning to think that Earth might have more to teach me than I thought," Zorath said, her voice soft but sincere. Adam raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you like the chaos, huh? Thought you'd come down here and tell us all to get in line." Zorath chuckled softly. "Not at all. But maybe there's something to be said for simplicity, something you humans have that we've long forgotten." Adam smiled, clearly pleased with the moment. "Well, that's a start. Next time I'll show you how to fix a toaster. Maybe we'll move on to the deeper mysteries of the universe." Zorath's laughter filled the small apartment, and for the first time since her arrival on Earth, she felt truly at ease. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this strange planet and this strange man than she had ever realized. And as the conversation drifted toward the mundane, toward what Earthlings called small talk, Zorath realized that this was only the beginning of a journey that would reshape everything she thought she knew about her people, her throne, and even herself. Over the next few days, Zorath found herself returning to Adam's apartment again and again. She had originally intended to observe him, to better understand the man who had saved her life, and to uncover the deeper motivations behind his actions. But something strange had happened, something she hadn't anticipated. She was beginning to enjoy spending time with him. The more she learned about Earth, the more it fascinated her. Adam's unorthodox lifestyle, his casual approach to life, his humor. It was all so alien to her, and yet somehow it made her feel more grounded than any royal council or diplomatic meeting ever had. Adam's apartment had become a strange kind of refuge for her, a place where she could let go of her responsibilities, her regal facade, and just be. And for him, it seemed, the novelty of having a queen casually lounging around his living room hadn't quite worn off. He would casually mention how weird it was to have a conversation about intergalactic diplomacy while snacking on cold pizza, or how strange it was to have someone who could talk about traveling to the farthest reaches of space without batting an eye. One evening, after a particularly ridiculous conversation about Earth's so-called romantic comedies, which Adam insisted were a prime example of human genius, Zorath found herself staring at the ceiling, her thoughts running in a different direction. "Tell me something, Adam," she said, breaking the silence. Adam, who had been fiddling with a half-broken piece of tech on the table, glanced up at her, intrigued. "I've been thinking," Zorath began, her voice taking on a more serious tone. About this life debt you've mentioned. You saved me, and yet you don't seem to care about what happens after. You don't ask for rewards, no grand gestures or recognition. Why? Adam gave her a half-smile, his eyes dancing with a kind of mischief. It's simple. You don't help people to get something back. You do it because it's the right thing to do. The world's full of people trying to get ahead by stepping on others. I don't need to be like that. Zorath blinked. It was a simple sentiment, but one that resonated more deeply than she had expected. It wasn't something she had heard in the courts of Eloria, where alliances and favor were often bartered for power. In fact, it was almost refreshing. You've never asked for anything even after saving my life, she mused. Why is that? Well, Adam said, sitting back and stretching his arms, I'm not really a reward kind of guy. You know how some people do a good deed and then expect something in return. It doesn't work like that for me. I just don't like to complicate things. Besides, I've already got everything I need. He paused, looking at her with a grin. That includes the opportunity to have a conversation with an actual queen. I think that's pretty cool. Zorath raised an eyebrow. You think I'm cool? Adam's grin widened. Yeah, I mean, you've got these amazing ears. No offense, but your species' fashion choices are a bit out there, though. Zorath rolled her eyes, but couldn't suppress the small chuckle that escaped. It was hard not to be charmed by Adam's blunt, unapologetic humor. She wasn't sure when it happened, but it had become easier to laugh, easier to let down her guard in his presence. There's that humor again, Zorath said, leaning back. But it's strange. You don't ask for anything in return, even though I saved your life. Adam interrupted, his tone light, almost teasing. Hey, let's not make a big deal out of it. I mean, what's a little heroism between friends? Zorath's gaze softened. Yes, that's it exactly. What is it about you, Adam? Why don't you feel any obligation? Most people would be exploiting this situation to their advantage. Adam looked at her for a moment, his expression becoming more serious. Maybe it's because I'm not a politician. I don't play games, and I'm not trying to use anyone. You're a queen, Zorath, but you're also a person. I saved you because I could. It wasn't because I expected something in return. I don't work that way. Zorath considered his words. She had been raised in a world of power, control, and carefully calculated moves. Eloria's politics were a game of alliances, betrayals, and maneuvering for dominance. In the court of Eloria, every action had a hidden agenda, every favor demanded something in return. Yet Adam was telling her that his motives had been pure. He hadn't asked for recognition, hadn't asked for power. It was unfathomable to her. But what about your future? She asked. Surely you must think about your own well-being. Don't you care about what happens next? Of course I do, Adam replied easily. But I don't believe that trying to control every aspect of your life is the way to go. People spend so much time thinking about the future, they forget to enjoy the present. I'm fine with whatever comes next because I'm doing what feels right. And right now, I'm helping you figure out what to do next. Zorath smiled softly, unable to hide the growing warmth she felt in her chest. There was something about his approach to life that disarmed her. He wasn't just a hero in the traditional sense. He didn't act out of some grand sense of duty or righteousness. He acted because it was the right thing to do, and that, to Zorath, was a rare and beautiful thing. You really don't ask for anything, Zorath repeated. But I've been thinking about something. We both know that saving a queen, no matter how casually you put it, has consequences. My people, Eloria, they'll want to repay you for this. They'll want to honor you, recognize you. Adam shrugged, his expression light. If that's what they want, fine, but I'm not here to collect on anything. You don't owe me anything. Zorath leaned forward, a mischievous glint appearing in her eyes. What if I told you that I, personally, would like to repay you in my own way? What if I told you that you might be in for a very different kind of reward? Adam's eyebrows shot up. Oh, that sounds like a trap. No traps, Zorath said with a sly smile. But perhaps there are things you've never even considered that could be. very beneficial. What if I could offer you access to the technology of my people? What if I could give you the ability to travel the stars, to see the universe, to... Adam raised his hands in mock surrender. Okay, I get it. You really are a queen. You're offering me intergalactic travel and advanced tech. But really, nah, I don't need all that. I'm doing fine, you know. I've got a pretty sweet setup here. Zoreth couldn't help but laugh, the sound filling the room. You are impossible. I offer you the universe and you turn it down. I'm a man of simple tastes, Adam said, winking. I think a decent sandwich and a good movie are enough for me. Zoreth leaned back in her chair, smiling despite herself. This was different. Everything about this situation was different. She had come to Earth expecting to find a man who would be awed by her status, someone who would see her as a queen to be honored. But instead, she had found someone who treated her like a person. And maybe that was enough. Well, Adam, Zoreth said after a long pause, it seems you're not so easily swayed by royalty and power, but I'll leave the choice to you. If you ever change your mind about a little intergalactic adventure, I'll let you know, Adam said with a grin. But right now, I think I'll take a rain check on the universe. How about we start with a walk to the nearest food stand? I'm feeling something human today. Zoreth laughed again, the tension of the conversation fading as easily as it had arrived. Maybe, just maybe, this was the kind of connection she had been looking for all along. Zoreth sat in the command room of her ship, staring out at the vast expanse of stars. Eloria was just beyond the next system, but somehow, the thought of returning felt different now. She had never thought that an Earthling, someone so far removed from her world, would affect her so profoundly. She had come here to find the man who had saved her life, but in the process, she had found something else. Something she hadn't known she was searching for. Are you sure about this? Adam's voice pulled her from her thoughts. She turned to see him standing at the doorway, a casual grin on his face. Despite all the galaxy's technological marvels, despite her royal title and the power at her fingertips, Adam had the ability to make her feel like just another person. That, she realized, was what made him so extraordinary. Zoreth smiled softly, turning to face him. I don't know what I expected from this journey. I thought I would leave Earth with a simple thank you and move on, but somehow, I think I've learned more than I expected. Adam chuckled, stepping into the room and leaning against the wall. You humans are complicated, huh? Zoreth raised an eyebrow. Speak for yourself. You're the one who doesn't want intergalactic travel or advanced Elorian technology. Adam shrugged nonchalantly. I've had my share of adventure, but if you ask me, there's something special about this, a quiet life. Simple things, a good cup of coffee and a sandwich, maybe a bad movie, a little slice of peace. Zoreth laughed, her voice light and carefree. So that's your dream, to be a sandwich enthusiast for the rest of your life. Yep, you nailed it, Adam said with a grin. Living the dream. Zoreth looked at him for a long moment, realizing how much she had changed during her time on Earth. The queen who had once been so focused on her responsibilities, on the weight of the throne and the politics of the galaxy, now felt a sense of ease. A sense of freedom. She had come to Earth expecting to uncover a great mystery to fulfill an obligation, but instead she had found a deep personal connection. Adam, she said, her voice softer now, I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About not complicating things. About helping others because it's the right thing to do. I've spent so much of my life thinking that every action had to be a calculated move, that everything was about power and duty. But I've learned something from you. Adam raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah, what's that? Zoreth stepped closer, the air between them charged with something new, something raw. That maybe it's not all about power, maybe it's about people. About the connections we make, the moments we share. That's what matters. Not titles, not thrones, just life, people. And I think that's the kind of queen I want to be. Adam's eyes softened. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her for a long while. Then he smiled, but there was a gentleness to it this time, different from his usual teasing grin. "I'd vote for you," he said quietly, his voice genuine. Zoreth smiled, her long ears twitching in a mix of amusement and something deeper. "Maybe someday you'll get the chance." The silence that followed wasn't awkward, but comfortable, filled with a sense of understanding, of unspoken words that had already been said. Zoreth realized, for the first time, that her journey wasn't just about returning to Eloria with answers. It wasn't about fulfilling her duty as a queen. It was about growing, learning, and perhaps even letting go of the expectations that had defined her existence for so long. "I don't know what the future holds," Zoreth said after a while, breaking the silence. "But I know one thing. I've seen a side of the universe I never thought possible, and maybe, just maybe, I'll find a way to keep learning from it." Adam nodded. "That's the spirit. And you know, if you ever get tired of ruling and want a change of pace, I know a great place for sandwiches." Zoreth laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet command room. It was a laugh that was free of tension, a laugh that felt like the release of something long held. "You never stop, do you?" Adam smiled. "Hey, I'm nothing if not consistent." Zoreth turned her gaze back toward the stars, the ship now in motion, heading back toward Eloria. But something felt different. The weight of the crown on her head didn't feel as heavy as it once had. She could already picture the grand halls of her planet, the conversations she'd have with her people. But it didn't matter as much anymore. What mattered now was the journey she had taken, the lessons she had learned, and the man who had shown her what it meant to be human. The door slid open, and a soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "We're approaching Eloria, Your Majesty." Zoreth turned to Adam with a grin. "Ready to return to your simple life, Earthling?" Adam stretched, then smirked. "You know, after this crazy adventure, I'm definitely ready for some peace and quiet. Maybe a sandwich." Zoreth laughed. "You and your sandwiches, I swear, you have no idea what real luxury is." Adam chuckled. "Hey, you don't know what you're missing." As the ship neared Eloria, Zoreth realized that this wasn't the end of her journey. It was only the beginning. There were many more decisions to be made, many more challenges ahead. But they didn't seem as daunting now. The future was still uncertain, but with a clear sense of purpose and a new perspective, Zoreth felt ready. And maybe, just maybe, the connection she had with Adam wasn't just an anomaly of Earth. It was a glimpse into something greater. Something she could take with her as she returned to her people. As they landed on Eloria, Zoreth stood with a sense of quiet determination. She wasn't the same queen who had left her planet weeks ago. She had changed. The crown she wore was still heavy, but now it was a symbol of the choices she would make, not just for her people, but for herself. And in the distance, she could already hear the distant whispers of what the future might hold, of the changes she would bring to her world and perhaps, one day, to the galaxy. Adam had taught her that being a leader wasn't just about power. It was about understanding, compassion, and the courage to make difficult choices. She would carry that with her always. And as the ship doors opened, Zoreth turned back to Adam one last time. "You've made me think differently about a lot of things. Thank you." Adam gave her a simple nod, his grin returning. "No need for thanks. But you know, if you ever need a break from the crown, you know where to find me." Zoreth laughed once more, her heart light. "I think I just might take you up on that." And with that, she stepped forward into the unknown future, the weight of the stars and the crown balanced with a new sense of freedom, a freedom she had never known until now.